Great. I'm delighted this morning to welcome you all to this year's Economic Forum. An economic forum different from all others we have had. But why not? Are we not living in different times? As the theme of this forum, we are created to manage disruption. Disruption to the economy coming in forms of pandemic and all other terms. So hence, this test of resilience to be able to continue with the forum we've always held despite the disruptions. I'm delighted this morning to welcome you all to this opening session. On the agenda, I do not see an item for prayer, but that is our normal event to begin with a prayer before we open any or we go on with any activity. So since there was nobody assigned, I will do the honors as well to pray for this forum. Let us pray. Our Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time set aside for us to put our heads together to deliberate on matters that affect us as a profession, but also affect our country, Uganda, and the world at large. Father, we know that you knew this before it came, but we didn't. But give us the wisdom to handle all aspects of this forum, different as it may seem. We ask that you be with our speakers, our organizers, and all our participants so that the forum will be fruitful and it will feed into policy and practice for the nation of Uganda. Thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayer, because we've prayed in your name, Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And everybody says amen.
Amen.
So I assume you all say amen.
Amen.
My name is Edna Rugumayo, CPA. I'll be the chair for this session. In short, I'm a public servant. I work with Uganda National Roads Authority as the Director of Corporate Services. And I am delighted this morning to host my boss, one of the two who hold the pulse of this nation. And that is none other than Mr. Patrick Ocailap. Mr. Patrick Ocailap really does not need any introductions because he's well known to all of us. But if I didn't do that honors, I would have lost an opportunity for him to hear me speak. So I'll introduce our guests who will open our forum this morning. Mr. Ocailap is a Ugandan national. He is married and has children. He is a guru of economics. He holds a master's degree in development economics from Williams College, Massachusetts, USA. Having attained his first degree as a Bachelor of Commerce, finance major from Makerere University. He's a development economist with vast experience. His CV is so long that I'll just summarize it. Currently, he's the Deputy Secretary to the Treasury, a post he has held since July 2013. In this position, he holds a long and rich record in formulating and managing public finance policy, in resource mobilization and allocation, in managing governance, different institutions and organs of government, including the ones that we hold close to our heart, like NSSF, Financial Intelligence Authority, National Housing and Construction Company Limited, and many others. He was Director Budget between December 2005 and July 2013, where he discharged all functions of budget formulation for this country. And during his time, he spearheaded fiscal prudence for delivery of resources to government priorities, and also spearheaded the institution of a number of systems, including output budgeting tool and integrated financial management system. Before that, he was Commissioner Aid Liaison Department between June 1999 and December 2005. And before that, there are so many others that I will not read. We are here to listen to a very, very rich and experienced person in the name of Mr. Patrick Ocailap, as we grapple with these problems of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have very rich experience to pick from, and I'm sure this forum will be highly enriched by his address. Join me all in welcoming Mr. Patrick Ocailap to open this forum for us and set the pace for the rest of the speakers. Thank you very much, Mr. Ocailap. We're ready to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Edna, for that detailed introduction. I think I'm humbled by your exquisite summary, which captured what I didn't know I was. But thank you very much.
Mr. Ocailap, perhaps you need to unmute.
No, we are hearing
Increase
him.
the volume on your...
We are hearing him.
Yes, I have unmuted. Are you hearing me now?
Loud and clear. You're very loud and clear.
Very loud.
It seems Edna is not hearing me.
Problem on your side, but otherwise it's very loud and clear.
Thank you. I think I'll proceed as the IT people try to set up Edna to equally share with me what it is. I'm going to put up distinguished members of
President, are you able to hear Mr. Ocailap?
Very well. It's very clear. Very, very clear. It's very, very clear.
Even me, it is very clear.
Yeah.
Yep. We can hear him.
Thank you very much. I can proceed now. Chairman Ispau and members of the Distinguished Association of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, I'm delighted to share some few thoughts with you. And those of you listening to the forum, the fourth growth forum yesterday, you will be able to see that quite a number of issues that I'm going to say today are actually, were actually repeated yesterday. If I sound repetitive, I think it is a very good coincidence that the growth forum which took place yesterday was part and parcel of the product from the ministry, and there may be no variations with respect to the content of what I'm going to deliver now. I will share with you on the screen the short statement I have. It's about 7 pages only, and it covers quite a number of issues that are pertinent to our discussion today. I'm trying to put up the Word document on your screen. That one, thank you. As you are all aware, the COVID pandemic certainly impacted the world in several adverse ways. Uganda's economy equally was affected, both internally and externally, in terms of its export earnings, severely as a result of the pandemic. There are about 5 impacts that I want to share with you this morning. The economies of the world where our products are exported certainly got shattered with respect to a decline in aggregate demand. The gross domestic output in a number of economies certainly came down in a very, very adverse manner. Secondly, the output of tourism or the earnings of tourism in this economy largely collapsed as a result of the decline in tourism in this economy. It is projected that the logistics disruption as a result of the pandemic have got a negative impact on the world economies as well as Uganda's economy. Uganda being a small economy in the world. We equally experienced a number of shocks affecting a number of enterprises, leading to a reduction in aggregate demand of the economy and a shrinkage in the employment opportunities across enterprises. I'm trying to scroll down, but I think it's coming through. On the domestic economy, Uganda experienced demand for our exports, which shrank by a proportion of over 75% during the period since March. Although lower than previously projected, Uganda's economic growth will be positive this year at the level of about 3.5% projection. The subsectors which are key in the resilience include cash crops with respect to the growth of the economy, manufacturing, if you notice that a number of manufacturing firms continue to manufacture, and telecoms continue to do a very good job in terms of the new technologies like this one, Zoom. I saw on the Bloomberg report yesterday that globally, the earnings of the IT and Zoom went 460%. So it's not a surprise that we're able to communicate using the technology of Zoom as a subset of the IT. So the IT and communication sector remained resilient internationally and also in Uganda. The temporary effects of the pandemic will be manifested in our balance of payments in the areas of tourism, export earnings, workers' remittances, and foreign direct investments. Uganda's economic growth, as I said, is projected to decline from the 6% just forecast to about 3 to 4% next financial year. 3% this financial year and for about 4.5% next financial year, which we have started now. However, with the policy interventions and plans that I think we managed to put in place in a short period of time, the economy is projected to fully recover next financial year to the growth levels of about 6 to 7%. I'll later on be able to highlight specific areas that all of us need to look into in order to revive the economy and see how fast economic growth should be able to move. A survey by Uganda Bureau of Statistics, which is our statistical bureau, indicates that, which was conducted between April and March, showed the devastating impact of COVID. I'll not be able to go through a number of these, but let me go through quickly that overall estimated output went down by 20% in the month of April. 29.4% of the businesses closed operations during April lockdown. About 34% and 35% of the manufacturing establishments operated at between 26 to 50% because of the lockdown activities, and 51 to 75% utilization capacity, respectively. It is quite devastating. 2.1 of the establishments introduced new products during the period. However, it was disadvantages of what was open at that time, which was mainly markets for food, the supply chains, with some innovations coming in the area of food delivery and delivery of items to households during the lockdown. 51.5% of the establishments reduced their payroll size as a result of the lockdown. People, literally, you see schools, private schools especially, who were getting the salaries paid through the tuition payments decline. Certainly, quite a number of that massive population of about 350,000 teachers were literally locked out of the salaried employment. And of course, that has a good devastating effect also on revenue, which also declined by the amount of payee, which otherwise those firms were paying to Uganda Revenue Authority. So you can see the knock-on effect of the lockdown in some of these sectors. 85.8% of the sector of the economy put in place safety measures in order to mitigate the COVID pandemic. However, despite that negative and grim picture, the economy remained slightly resilient and survived to this date. For example, inflation remained reasonably stable at single digit, although it rose slightly on account of the curtailment of the transport costs because of the massive production of food, which continued uninterrupted by COVID. The inflation levels remained within single digits. That's the good news. The opportunities also emerged as a result of COVID, and it helped us expedite putting in place appropriate strategies to harness the wealth and potential of this country in order to deal with the immediate impact of COVID, as well as the import substitution opportunities that became available. Number one, in the wake of COVID, the government is expediting the export promotion and import substitution using the comparative advantage basically on agriculture. In terms of strategic planning, therefore, this called for two things immediately: expansion of the production base to support industrialization, especially the agro-industrialization. That's where the heartbeat of this economy is. Had it been difficult for people to produce food, or had food production been affected as a result of the pandemic, I think we would be in a worse position than now. Can you imagine a situation of importing food? We were able to buy food domestically at that period in time when the food was supplied to vulnerable groups because the food was readily available domestically, and that meant that the aggregate demand, which declined globally and also locally, was slightly jacked up by 59 billion, which was released for buying food for the vulnerable groups in the Kampala area, Wakiso area, Mukono, etc., etc. And that meant a direct injection of aggregate demand to the producers of agricultural products, and that meant a slight increase or improvement in the household incomes of these people. Therefore, they need to strategically now link that with industry in order to increase the shelf life of the output, domestic output here is a fast track activity, which was part of the domestic package, stimulus package, which the Minister of Finance announced, and also HE, the President. Second, we quickly moved into boosting final and intermediate demand for locally produced goods and services and mobilizing external markets for our goods. We exported increased volumes of coffee. Thank God that there were forward orders for coffee, and we realized quite a substantial increase in coffee earnings during that period, and they are still growing. Two, we also exported some items which hitherto were not part and parcel of the exports, but formed part of the innovative activities to intervene in. For example, the hand sanitizers were exported to the region globally. And the last statistic I saw was in excess of about $80 million earned by those people who were exporting to the sub-region. Although little, it actually showed some little earnings as a result of that. Quite a number of processed agricultural products, processed and unprocessed equally, continue to earn us some amount of money. So in the interim, therefore, the need to boost the final agro-processing industry in this country through the stimulus package, through UDB, through the Microfinance Support Center, through the number of other initiatives, the Myoga, etc., are a direct interjection into the economy for us to be able to stimulate production based on comparative advantage, number one, and two, be able to manage and add value to that in order to improve the export value and earnings as a result of those exports. The priority areas for expansion, I've already mentioned quite a number of them. The food production certainly runs fast. The second one is expansion of agro-based industrialization. The bananas, maize, Irish potatoes, etc. There is also the textile industry, which is coming, but slightly slower than what we expected. But it is an area where we shall be able to accelerate the production. But that will be over the medium term. And if you looked at my presentation, which I'm scrolling through the screen, I delayed to make a PowerPoint presentation, which I made it better. But you can see clearly that the number of initiatives, you go on up to 15, which show you the areas of opportunities that are available for us to expand our export base. I know my time is running out. On the export side, I did mention the issue of coffee and horticultural exports taking a very big role in terms of turning around the economy post-COVID. The food production, I mentioned that also. The pharmaceutical industry, ICT solutions, which of course on the negative side, they cut on the labor costs, but on the positive side, they'll provide efficient mechanism within which we shall be able to pass on the technologies and also produce wealth for our population. Intermediate goods for product construction industry are also coming up very well. And construction industry, as you notice, was one of the areas which we benefited from the early opening up of the economy. And that led to a positive increase in the growth of the economy in that aspect. I did mention a number of specific areas where we did some acceleration, and there are about 5 components. The areas of immediate government intervention to prevent and contain the outbreak, that's what we did. And in this area, you saw that we managed to mobilize about 284 billion Uganda shillings. That went into a number of areas. There was immediate fiscal adjustment because we know that if you don't manage the economy very well in terms of cutting back on expenditures that cannot be met and reallocating that money to areas to stimulate the economy or to deal with the vulnerable groups, as we did, it will be difficult and we shall be acting full-hearted. So what did we do in the immediate upfront of the pandemic? We had to cut back on expenditures on travel abroad. Of course, that was natural. It had to happen. We had to cut back on expenditures of non-wage recurrent to realize the 284 billion, which is then applied to areas of emergencies and areas of medical imports, areas of test kit imports, etc., etc. We also had to provide resources to Uganda Development Bank for accelerating our import substitution. We had to increase the agricultural production. Quite a number have been supplied already for the production at the domestic economy. And there are quite a number of monetary policy measures, which I think all of you are familiar with, which the Bank of Uganda put in place, including allowing for negotiating rescheduling of credit, etc., etc. That helped give liquidity to the enterprises. We also gave a number of tax measures, deferment of pay as you earn, that most of you know, waiver of interest on tax arrears, support to water and electricity sectors, expediting the payment of VAT refunds, payment of domestic arrears. In fact, in the first quarter, which is ending this month, we gave about 450 billion out of the arrears, and that was paid out. And that was a direct response to the need to increase aggregate demand in the economy. Because while you increase the supply side of the economy, you must pay attention to increasing the demand side of the economy. And indeed, that injection of 450 billion went to payment of supplies to government, which had hitherto not been paid on account of other constraints. But I think we had to make sacrifices and paid 450 billion last month for suppliers for food in some institutions which buy food from the domestic market, fuel in some institutions, etc., etc. And that went directly into the economy, and that fed in very well. I talked about the issue of capitalizing Uganda Development Bank. That was a decision of the shareholders. And that capitalization, as you heard from the minister's announcement, and also the president's address, State of the Nation, now goes up to 1 trillion. We have released the 450 billion to UDB. And I think you must have seen a call for proposals for UDB for financing. And I think you as the association need to put the enterprises on track with respect to preparing appropriate books of accounts and also preparing appropriate feasibility, bankable feasibility studies, etc., etc., for them to be able to access these resources as a matter of urgency. The balance of the payments will be given, the balance of the money shall be given to UDB as soon as we get it, so that UDB has got that financial muscle to deal with SMEs as well as small enterprises that require capital in order to expand their operations, in order to expand the business opportunities. We also put in 100 billion, you heard about that, to Uganda Development Bank for them to be able to take up shares where maybe the private sector may not be able to be interested, but we know the enterprise can work, or where the private sector needs a partner with government in order to stimulate investment in that area and move on. We're also boosting the funding to Uganda Industrial Research Center for incubation technologies that are necessary for us to add value to the domestic production. We also secured quite a number of resources for the industrial parks and a number of other additional resources for agriculture, specifically in area of expanding research for high value items. And that one is continuing. In fact, an enhanced arrangement there, as well as the capacity to be able to deal with irrigation. Irrigation is very critical and will form the larger part of the investment in the agriculture sector because number one, right now we have rain. That's very good. Farmers produced very good, but God forbid, given the cyclical nature of the weather and the viciousness of the weather patterns, if drought hits, the first area to be hit is agriculture. And if we're indeed banking on agriculture to leverage us on food security domestically and be able to supply industry for value addition in line with our strategy for export promotion, as well as import substitution of the items that we're importing, then we shall be devastated. The most important thing, therefore, is invest in irrigation technologies, preferably based on solar power, because solar power along the equator where we are will be there throughout the year, and it's a better source of pumping money, water from down to irrigate our farms, and it's a sustainable way to deal with this economy. So that is at the forefront of our strategic direction with respect to the post-COVID action that's necessary for us to sustain our production capacities. There are quite a number of other things that we are doing, but I think in the interest of time, I know my time was only 20 minutes. I think I've spoken for over 30 minutes. We shall be able to then summarize the presentation with respect to what are we doing post-COVID and what's the strategic direction of the economy. And I will summarize it as follows. There is no doubt that COVID is there and may stay with us for some time to come. It is therefore necessary for us to seize 5 opportunities for us to deal with a sustainable way to develop ourselves. Number 1, for enterprises to pick up themselves from where they are, it may be necessary, and it is necessary, for us to provide the badly required financing for them to be able to get inputs that will make them come up and move forward with respect to production at the domestic level. bigger emphasis will definitely be laid on agriculture in this respect, and more efforts will be put in areas of irrigation, areas of fertilizers, and areas of agronomy that increase productivity in order to continuously supply the domestic market. Number two, it is necessary to link the production capacities of the various enterprises to innovative approaches that make the enterprises grow, because changes in technology are the ones that will create additionality, marginal benefits to the production enterprises in terms of they are changing the production methods, they are changing the way they organize business, their marketing and logistics arrangements, etc., etc., so that they too can be able to seize the opportunities. Point number three, as the economy opens, it's necessary for us to realize that the larger part of the informal sector, which was immediately hit when the crisis came, need to be organized and formalized in order to be able to generate, one, institutions that can help them promote the saving culture, so that in the unlikely event that another crisis hits, I'm saying unlikely because I don't want another crisis to hit anytime soon, there should be savings for people to follow on, including or beyond the formal employment NSSF savings. There should be informal saving culture along the investment clubs. That must be promoted. And I think the role of Institute of Chartered Public Accountants in this area is very, very critical in helping institutions organize. Institutions such as the border groups, why can they organize so that next time a crisis hits, they don't become vulnerable the following day? There should be some kind of saving. And it's quite possible for us to organize them. The taxi people, these people who live hand to mouth now, need to be formally organized into organized investment groups and be able to have, even if it means forced saving for a start, I think let's organize them that way. That way, we shall be able to build a very strong financially integrated sector with the rest of the activities that happen in the economy. Number four, there is need for us then, as government has already started, to be able to seize opportunities as markets outside open to expand the export potential of our economy. And there are quite a variety of items that we can replace along the model of import substitution and export promotion through a number of investments in the domestic economy, starting with agriculture, which is a low-hanging fruit. Number five, and finally, is the issue of my job now is to look at the rationale within which we should be able to accelerate absorption capacity of the resources that we are borrowing from both domestic and external market to ensure that the expected benefits of those projects are realized. And a number of initiatives have taken place there in order to create the necessary efficiencies in that area so that the economic growth is quickly turned around within the next financial year to the program growth levels. Those five take-home messages form the basis for the strategy for us to respond to the COVID pandemic and be able to bounce back strong. I thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry I strayed over beyond the time that I was allocated, but I thought I should give you the high-level issues around that, and we are open for further discussions. I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my views with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ocailap. And members, I'm sure you agree with me that we couldn't have had a better choice. We have had the before, the during, and the plans for going forward. And that sets a very, very good foundation for the rest of our discussions. At this point, let me ask CPA Frederick Tibedi, immediate past president, to move a vote of thanks to our guest speaker and also make his remarks to the forum. CPA Frederick,
Thank you very much, Edna. I'm probably to correct you as chair of the session. I'm not yet past because there's no present president. So I still am firmly in the chair as president of the institute, but I'm willing to sit to the next president as soon as we organize ourselves. The invitation is to move a vote of thanks, and what an honor and privilege, Mr. Patrick Ocailap, my friend, and the fellow Rotarian and fellow churchmate. We have had so many things together with Patrick. It's an honor for this forum to have you. Let me tell the forum a story. In 2011, I visited Patrick in his office. That time he was still director budgeting, I think. And we were discussing issues of expanding export promotion activities. I realized that if you wanted to visit Uganda, you would only succeed in visiting it economically if you first talk to Patrick, because he knows everything about this economy, and he speaks so very passionately about how we need to move the country forward. There's a saying from our people, and Professor Balunywa will agree with me. We have a saying that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. Instead, we have just borrowed it from our children. So we owe the children an explanation of how we have been good trustees of the resources that we have found, because this nation and this country and these resources belong to them that are going to live in the future. So speaking with Patrick Ocailap and listening to his views and ideas gives us the very big confidence that we are preparing ourselves to hand over this economy and this country to the children that will actually say thank you our forefathers for doing such a good job. Fellow CPAs and the members of the attending this economic forum, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you so much for showing up and turning up and participating in these activities that are very important in the building of our nation. Patrick has ably told us what happened during the pandemic and what responses are being given. There is another saying from, the people from Sogas have a lot of wise sayings. They say that a child who is not embraced by the village will one day burn down that village to test the warmth of the village. So it's very important in your response to address those issues that are affecting people who would otherwise feel defranchised or unable to take part and participate in the economy, like the informal sector. And that has been very well articulated. The Institute will continue its drive in positioning itself as a strategic business advisor to government and to the key stakeholders in the country that play a big role in driving this economy, because that's what we are trained to do. And I urge all professional accountants and members of the Institute and players to embrace this change that has come with the pandemic. Last year we were talking at the Economic Forum about the digital disruption. And we didn't know that the bigger disruption that was coming was going to ride on a pandemic like COVID-19. But indeed, so many things have been realized, including the opportunities that we have to build ourselves and prepare ourselves better. Patrick there said that he doesn't pray that it happens again, but just in case there's another happening of it, we should be found better prepared. I think these are the Itesots who say that during the moment of crisis, the wise man builds a bridge, but the foolish build dams. You build a dam when there is a storm, you build a dam to store the water that is there and forget that the storm might occur again. So you need to build a bridge so that you are able to overcome the issues that you have gained experience in as a result of the present crisis. So during this year, since March, ICPAU has held a number of webinars that has equipped its members with the skills that are necessary in responding to the issues of the crisis as it is. And I'm telling you that we probably would never have organized this much better with better efficiencies and reduced costs like we did with the pandemic, thanks be to the technology enhancement that has brought us to the point where this is happening. So this year's forum, which is really themed on recovery from the impact of COVID. You have struck the note very well, the keynote very well. And now it's time for the players of the music to dance to the tune that you have struck. And we are so honored and privileged to have had you. And I would like to welcome every participant to this forum. I would like to welcome the notables that are going to be speaking to us. And I mean, you have an expanse of people that are going to participate in this. You have those from the academia, like Professor Balunywa. You have those from the private sector, like Mr. Everist Kayondo. You have the practitioners like CPA Francis Kamlege, who participate very, very vehemently in the issues of tax policy and tax advisory. You have professors and the academic people like Ramadan Gobi, who all the time are thinking about what strategic direction we should be taking. I think it's a rich forum for us to be able to look at the ideas, put them together, and bring back to you an advisory that we think should be able to help our country go forward. We want to thank you very much, and we want to thank you very much for the way you have summarized it. I think it's very important that we continue to engage so that at the end of the day, our country is better because we have played our part. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much, members of the forum, and I wish you nice deliberations in the next 3 days that we'll be discussing these issues. Chair, back to you.
Thank you very much. President CPA Frederick Chivedi, my apologies for removing you from the throne too early. Thank you very much for that. And Mr. Ocailap, I know you are very busy, but please stay with us for as long as you can. Because when we talk, when a wise man is listening, I think we also gain from the wisdom. So thank you very much once again. Our next.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Edna. As you said, I have to rush and submit some information which is required for discussions which are about to be concluded on what to do with the further actions on the economy. So I'll beg that I'll go and deliver that information to a higher office. Then I'll join you back when I come back from there. It takes about 1 hour because I have it ready and typed out. So I just have to deliver the hard copy because that was the instruction I got. So I beg to leave now, but then come back
Please.
Later.
Please, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can leave at liberty. Okay, members, once again, in your own places, please applaud Mr. Ocailap. He has to leave, but he has promised to be back. And as we go on, our next session is our keynote address. And our speaker, once again, is somebody who needs no introduction, really. Our next speaker, the speaker who will give us our keynote address on the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, is Professor Waswa Balunywa, PhD. Professor Waswa Balunywa is currently the principal of Makerere University Business School, and he has been teaching in the university for over 30 years. Perhaps some of our members were not born when he started teaching. His area of expertise has been in business administration, accounting, finance and management, entrepreneurship, strategy, change management, and leadership. And I'm sure there are other things that were left out. Professor Balunywa led the team that started private programs in Makerere University, hence changing the landscape of higher education, not only in this country, but in the region as well. He's a pioneer. He's also one of the architects of the Makerere University Business School that has become a leading business school in the region. The school started off with one faculty, the Faculty of Commerce. It had one degree program and about 220 students. but it now boasts of 20 undergraduate programs. Not only that, it has 11 master's programs and also a PhD program. The current student population is approximately 20,000 students. Professor Balunywa holds a PhD in entrepreneurship, attained from the University of Stirling in the United Kingdom. He also has a BCom and an MBA from the University of Delhi in India. He's an author. He has published books and many articles in various journals. He's also a blogger. It's not only for the young. He writes extensively on the economy and economic management and social issues. And he's a guru in leadership and governance. He has sat and continues to sit on several important boards in this country, including Bank of Uganda, Uganda Airlines, Coca-Cola, and many others. He currently serves on the Madvani board, and he's a patron of several associations. He's also a social entrepreneur and works with members of his family to support vulnerable women, youth, especially the girl child. The Balunywa Foundation, of which he's a director, is endeavoring to put girls into schools, those girls who have not had the opportunity to attain an education. What a noble cause. Professor Balunywa is also widely traveled, and in his pleasure time, he enjoys wrestling and yoga. Join me, members, in welcoming Professor Waswa Balunywa to speak to us. Professor Balunywa, you have about 45 minutes to speak. It could stretch to 50, knowing that you might have quite a lot to say to us. And then we'll take the last 20 to 25 minutes in a question and answer session, a discussion of sorts. Over to you, Professor Balunywa.
Thank you very much, Edna and Chair, for this morning. I want to say a very good morning to all of you who are listening in this morning. I'd like to compliment CPA for this annual event, and it's some time since I was last invited to this, and it was a pleasure for me to be able to come and say a few things about the economy, especially during these times. You may not know, but when it was being established, then the Honorable Minister Kafumbe Mukasa requested me to go around various places. He gave me money as Minister of Finance to go to the UK, Kenya, Tanzania, India, to see and be able to advise on how best we could establish a CPA in Uganda. I advised all my colleagues, my teacher colleagues, to do a CPA. It was only me who didn't do one. I don't know why I didn't do that, but I thought my academic responsibilities, and both academic and administrative, kept me out of this. But I'm very keen at this, and I know that there's no way a country can grow without a professional accountants association. So my congratulations to this association for being able to host these periodical meetings and discussions. So this morning I want to talk about economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic, and I must say from the beginning that the government of Uganda has really done a great job over the years. I don't think there's anything they've not done. And listening in on what the Deputy PSST was saying, you could see really that there has been a lot of work, a lot of effort in getting this country to improve it. But there are few issues that need to be calibrated, that need to be addressed to enable this country get out of the poverty that it has and possibly take off. One of the things that you will see in this country that is mainly keeping us back is money, money, money will not work. Everybody wants money. Syndrome. Anybody who wants to do something, government cannot help everybody. It has a major responsibility, but it's our responsibility as individuals to see that we are able to do some work and be able to have our livelihood. The role of government really should be in facilitating conditions, and of course, if the ideological issues are clear, government's role can be clearly identified. The other biggest problem in our country, which I think will fail to come through, is the nature of our society. 80% of our people are rural and poor, and this is a major problem. As we attempt to create a middle class, we have a major problem on really how do we get that numbers out, and this may be our major problem. And to me, while government has all these wonderful policies, has implemented all these issues, a few things which I'll end up with are the problems that we experience. So what we have at the moment, we have all of a sudden we have this pandemic. I mean, it's just came in, and I think I'd even but here we are, you know, it hits us and closes the economy and causes disruptions. And I think it is reported to be the biggest disruptor in the world since World War II. In fact, may even be worse than World War II, because in World War II, you had to be on the front line to die. Today, you don't have the front line to die. The whole point is that the virus which you cannot see, you know, if it gets you and you do not get proper medical treatment, you may die. So as of yesterday, I think the report is that 253 million people have been confirmed cases of COVID-19. That should be 25 million, sorry, 25.3 million. 16 million have recovered, and we've had about 850,000 deaths since this started way back in November last year, but it peaked after April, May, June. That's when the serious problems came in. And there have been similar pandemics. We don't need
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Professor Balunywa, but could you please go into slideshow so that the slides are more visible?
Okay, slideshow. I'll need
just on the top of the bar.
Yes,
it's the seventh tab. Yes.
Yeah. Are we
from current slides?
Yeah, it should give us the entire
down.
Yeah, that's better, I think.
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Sorry, I just missed that. So so what has happened? This virus, which you all don't know where it originates, there are a lot of conspiracy theories where it originates. It originates in America, it originates in China. But of course, where it is traced from is China. But there are many other theories that we've had, which tell us where this is coming from. And the point was that if you really wanted your people in the country not to die, you had to lock down the country. You had to stop everything in the country. And what appeared quickly was there was stoppage of flights, stopping of movement of people, closure of education institutions, closure of religious institutions. The production of goods and services went down, markets were closed, and this was the biggest disruptor in the economic system of the world that we have ever seen. And what's the consequence of the lockdown? We had expected high inflation because of low production, but in Uganda, I think as the PSS indicated, we've had a very good production of food, and food has a very big impact on prices in this country. So inflation has not been much, as been indicated. However, we noted layoffs and high unemployment among people. we who are in the universities, we had private universities told their employees, look, after April or after May, I will not be able to pay. Please come back when we reopen. We have also seen low production required people to be present, those who required the raw materials from abroad. There was a slowdown in the production of various goods, and of course, the rendering of services. And then we've seen excessive expenditure on health. The government of Uganda has come up, be able to manage the crisis. It has been able to spend a lot of money, which you've had, that has gone into health. Of course, including other things like giving food, supplying food to the vulnerable people, which we saw some time back. So these are consequences of the lockdown. Of course, there are much more. There are many more others, which we cannot go down into at this moment in time. But what are the most affected areas? The PSST mentioned them: tourism, transport, education. In the education sector, so we have 14 million people affected by the lockdown. Nothing is happening. Nothing is happening to the sector. We are seated, children are in the villages, and a lot of things that are happening. The oil and gas industry was affected as flights went down, as people sat down in their homes. Manufacturing, the retail sector was affected grossly. And these are some of the challenges that we've got. So globally, we've seen a lot of things that have been happening, some kind of repetition, layoffs. In the US, as you see, at one stage, they had over 45 million people who have been laid off. We've seen stock exchange declines, but in recent months, the stock exchange global, the leading stock exchanges have been going up. This is due to the value of iPhone, of Apple. It has caused something in the markets, but we should, those markets, people are wondering what is happening to it. Really, is this true that there is a rise in the share prices? Businesses are closing, of course, low demand for goods and services. We are seeing bankruptcies around taking place. Of course, we've also seen people dying. Members of families have been dying, and many countries are risking a recession. We are wondering whether the recession will be with us. As demand goes down, and we see people are being laid off. When you read about the Great Depression, the signs are there. The signs of what happened there. In both directions. As for instance, the stock markets rise, we're wondering what is happening, because the stock market crash was one of the key features of the Great Depression. And some of the lost. Of course, countries are picking up, they are re-employing people. And the US recorded over 440 million people out of that 400 million. Germany recorded the highest figure of 8 million, the UK 12 million. For Africa and for Uganda, we don't have comprehensive data, so we really can't talk much about it. I think I've seen some figures which come from UBOS. At times we've got to wait for these figures to take some bit of time before they are cleaned and we get the actual figures on job losses. What is happening around the world is going up, Japan up 3%, Germany 3.9%, the UK 4.1%, Canada, all these are various changes. And you look at the US, the figure went up from 3.7%. This what is happening globally, and it's important for us to note what has happened in our country. As I said, our figures are not yet there. If you look at the prices of oil, you can see it went up from about $70 people is now getting back as the economy is trying and recover as people start traveling. And oil is a very big factor in global trade. So the prices of oil impact largely on what is taking place globally. With this, the huge drop in shoppers, we're talking about retailing, you can see what has happened in these countries. Of course, now in these countries where you also have online buying, like the US, the UK, Japan, there's a lot of online purchases, but you can see that there was a lot of dropping in shopping. And this has an impact that jobs have gone, people are not selling, and definitely this causes problems in all economies. If you look at, these are pictures of planes which are just on the ground, they're not flying, and the planes are not supposed to stay on the ground. Planes are supposed to be in the air. So when they are parked like that, it tells you that around the world. So what has been the impact of the virus? I want to look at this at three levels: the individual level, the national level, and the country level. Because when you're looking at getting out of this, then you must also look at those aspects. We've seen people losing loved ones. There are some videos that circulate, and you see people saying, "I'll make it," and they don't make it, and the families have these problems. There's been suicide, there's been depressions, loss of jobs, and keeping indoors has also been a problem. A lot of challenges about people staying together for a long time. You hear some marriages are broken as a result of this, and there's a lot that has been happening at the individual level. I believe that you know your own story of what has been happening to you. At the organizational level, we know, I believe that most of us work in different organizations, and we've been seeing what has been happening there. We are laying off employees. There's a decline in production of goods, decline in rendering services, bankruptcies, closures, all these are coming up at the organizational level as a result of the disruption. So when you talk about recovering, we should know where are we coming from. And at the national level, what has been the impact? You need to look at it by sector. For instance, the education sector. There are 14 million people in the education sector who are studying and teaching. And well, what is the future? How do you get out of this? And we must know that whenever a major change is going to happen, there's always a crisis, there's always chaos. And the chaos right now that is happening, not only in education, but various other sectors, is that we are at a standstill and we need to move on. We need to get out of this standstill. The communication sector, the telecommunication companies will tell you that there was a decline in calls, a decline in mobile money. Of course, transport sector kind of came to a standstill. Buses, taxis, all these stopped working. In the banking sector, I know that banks started some of the branches, closed branches. They closed ATM machines so that they're able to survive the consequence of the lockdown. Agriculture sector, agriculture in this country maybe was not really affected very much, except in the distribution system. As long as we have got food, I think we've not had a problem with supply of food, which tells you that our agriculture production has been robust, has been vibrant, and the food prices continue to be low, which has been a wonderful advantage for this country. Tourism sector literally collapsed. Many of us had conferences in hotels. The big hotels are kind of closed today. You find one or two people walking around, and of course, the export sector has suffered there's a decline in foreign direct investment, decline in manufacturing, foreign currency inflows, the diaspora remittances. I don't know how much this has been this year, but this was constituting 1/3 of the country's export earnings. Trade has been a problem, tax collections have been a problem. Definitely the country has been in a crisis. But I want to mention a little bit, what have been Uganda's problems prior to the coronavirus pandemic? I think some of the problems which I capture here is poverty, the level of poverty. Poverty had gone down, I think 19%, it's up again. That is on the dollar per day. If you go to the $2 per day, it goes up about 50-something%. That should bother us as people who are talking about economics and economic recovery. We have a very low productivity rate. Whenever I speak about this, I'm talking about the usage of our production of key things in the agriculture sector is the whole. And if you expect to do the same thing again, use this same implement again, and expect different results, you have a problem with it. This country is putting so much money. I know that my colleague Ramadan is on board. He's a rapporteur for this conference. But however much money we put into agriculture, into the women, into the youth, into Emyoga, as long as we don't address the issue of productivity, there's nothing that we are doing. The numbers out there are outstanding. When you walk out in any village, in any town, you see lots of young people walking around at different ages. And to me, they have no future. I know that His Excellency President have said, create a big population and have a big market, but not when they are poor, not when they're not educated. This is something that as we look at economic policies, as we look at middle income status, we must address the issue of a high population. And indeed, to the times of the philosophers of Socrates, they said, don't produce children you cannot look after. But what happens? Many of us who got a job, once you get a job and you've got a house, everybody from the village comes to see you, can you please give me school fees for children that they have produced? Our economy is still agro-based. I know that the amount of GDP contribution from agriculture has been reducing, but the non-monetized agriculture contribution to GDP continues to be high. The population in agriculture, and we have 70%. It tells you a story of poverty, and these 70% rely on God's will. Sunshine, when it rains, it doesn't rain, you have a problem. These are challenges, and of course, corruption. These are some of the problems that we've had. I said at the beginning that the government of Uganda has put wonderful policies in place, but there are some of these aspects that knock the policies down. You cannot have wonderful policies with corruption. You cannot have wonderful policies with high population growth. The impact is not there. The impact is neutralized. I would say, what will be Uganda's economic problems post-coronavirus pandemic? They're the same problems. They will be the same problems. Unless if we go down to address a few things as we see when I talk about as they close. Unless if we go down to address some of these issues in a very systematic manner, these problems will continue to be with us for a long time. If we don't address corruption, it will stay around with us. Look at what is happening right now with elections. I'm sure you have a relative who is standing and they're looking for money. So you get money, put it into election, and what is it doing? What is that money doing? And the people who are getting it, what are they doing? They're not investing this money. They're using it for consumption. Well, it keeps the economy going, but I think that's not the way the economy should run. So we want to recover from the coronavirus pandemic, and what we do to recover from the pandemic. And I want to discuss this at the three levels: the individual level, the organizational level, and the national level. At the individual level, you as an individual, what are you doing to adjust to what is taking place today? If you do not adjust, you're going to become irrelevant. You're going to become obsolete. And I did a Bachelor of Commerce in Accounting, so I'm very passionate about accounting. But today, literally all the work done by clerks, accountants, as account assistants, accountants in organizations is done by the computer. So can we rethink the profession of accounting? Where is it going? Yesterday I was listening to Rotarian talking about who moved my cheese, who moved my Rotary, saying that, Rotary may not survive because LinkedIn is quickly eating it up. Now, will the accountancy profession survive if it does not adjust to the current conditions in IT? And that is not for only the accountancy profession, it is literally for everything else. I'm doing some work for PSFU in the technical and vocational institutions, and we put in as I looked around, I found out there are now robots which build walls, which do plaster. So I was asking, what are we teaching? So those people who want to build huge buildings that have been taking up lots of our people, they don't need masons anymore because they are machines which are perfect and they don't fall sick. They mix the cement very well. They don't actually even steal the cement. So at the individual level, reassess yourself. Do not become obsolete. Reinvent yourself. You need to look at what are the opportunities that are coming up. Very quickly, what happened? Masks, sanitizers, they came up as opportunities. What is happening in your profession? There are new skills that are coming up, especially IT-related skills. The soft skills like leadership. These are the skills that everybody needs to know now. So at the individual level, recovering from the pandemic, we need to restart and reinvent ourselves as individuals in our professions. We need to have a critical think at our professions and say, are we still relevant the way we've been? We need also, as individuals, look at our incomes and expenditure. As many people were laid off, we had a problem in the country. You had phone calls from relatives who are saying, look, I have nothing to eat. They stopped paying us in the month of April. You have relatives who have said, you see, find me money and I go back to the village because I can't afford to stay in town. There have been stories of people walking hundreds of miles back into the villages. So at the individual level, to emerge out of this coronavirus pandemic, we must rethink who we are, where we are going, and incorporate technology in the reinvention of our careers. So that's very important at the individual level. What do organizations need to do? If you survived and you're still in operation, what do you need to do during this pandemic and getting out of it? It's very important for you possibly to scale back your production, your activities, as you watch what is happening. You are laying off staff, or you have flexible working arrangements. People work from home, or people work in shifts. You may have to close down some of the parts of your business. It's very important for you to communicate with your suppliers and creditors so that they know communicate with their customers, of course. That should be the first thing. Find out, do they still need your service? Do they still need your product? Do they have effective demand? Can they buy? Look at the airline business. we haven't traveled for some time now. What is happening to airline business? So talk to the bankers. Of course, you see that when government was announcing the stimulus package, they said, reschedule loans. If you don't go into the bank, they will not reschedule the loan. They continue to debit your account as if nothing has happened. You need to take stock of your stocks and your cash. What do I have? Cash flow, you as accountants know this very well. An organization without cash flow cannot survive in the long run. What are your cash flows? If you're not selling, what is going to happen to you? You have a contingency plan. You have, go on, review your risks and see what are the risks that I have? What is bothering me at this moment in time? So as organizations, it's very possible that we may have to close and rethink in your business. If you are to survive, you may have to restructure this business. It's not going to be easy for you to continue to survive in your business without reviewing it, without knowing that your customers still exist, without knowing that you have the cash to do the operation that you want to do. So the individual is about you as an individual. The organization is about the organization, and the organization also and the individual benefit from government action. So we want to look at the government action, but before we do that, I've taken these from the press. Some of the statements that came out in the press. COVID-19 gulps EBL profits down by all of $28.7 million. Hotel tourism hit hard. 4,200 companies closed down over COVID. Hundreds of hotel workers are on forced leave. Government loses 300 billion shillings in revenue. NGOs are worried as donors go silent on funding. Shillings takes beating over coronavirus. Food prices rocket as markets are closing down. All these are statements in the press. Definitely telling you that there is a major crisis in the economy. And who is supposed to do something about it? What do you do as a country? As a country at the national level, this is the responsibility of government. We must appreciate that the country is in an economic crisis. Government must revisit, reform, and review its policies. And my feeling that it has done this, but not to the extent that it should have done. Not to the extent of the crisis. Government must lead the way in getting people out of the coronavirus problem. Government has a major role in the economy. When the lockdown happened, the president spoke to the nation and said, we'll close down. Simple as that. That's government. So government has that power to govern. And that power to govern carries with it responsibilities. So these responsibilities is why government has a major role in the economy, especially under such circumstances. Government has a role to safeguard lives of the people. That's why government has come up with the lockdown and these are other measures, many of which we're just pushing around. Government has a role to show people the way. What do we need to do? Government has a role under such circumstances to provide health care. And government has a role to support business to survive the pandemic. Because where does government get the money? It uses. Government gets money it uses from tax. And when it borrows or it gets grants, grants are from taxes collected from other countries. When it borrows, it must pay back from taxes that are collected. So the survival of business is of utmost importance to government. The direction of business going into growing and being able to pay more tax is extremely important to government. So government has this major role to play in the economy. And it must show the way, it must take the initiative. What is the stimulus package that government gave us? It is contained in the budget. And to me, it is too little. government didn't do much. This is what is said in the budget. There was a delay of payment of tax. Other sectors, they allowed the payment of tax till September. They were simply deferring the payment of tax. Government recommended reissuing of loans in banks. Government also recommended relaxing terms for non-performing loans. And government also recommended that banks should reduce their reserve requirements so that the banks have the government package on the stimulus package, government stimulus package. And to me, this was issues of the economic crisis that was created by the pandemic. Government, to me, appeared to continue in its normal operations. We had a budget was approved, and as we start spending the budget, we realize that there's a problem. The money is not there. The tax has not been collected. So that's why we need to me, what should government do? I think in terms of fiscal and monetary policy measures, one, government must reduce tax. You see, government wants the money, but when you tax a cow that can no longer give you milk, you have a problem. So government wants the money, but for me, what we need to do at the moment is reduce tax so that companies have more money to spend to stimulate their own production in their own organizations. And if you stimulate tax, so we must reduce the tax rates. I think but this should be reduced. For the next 6 months to 1 year, there should be a reduction in as you earn. If companies have laid off people, money is not there. So what we need is that those few people who are earning a salary, if you waive their pay as you earn for some time, the money will go into the economy to stimulate production in the economy. And government should also find a way of availing loans at low interest rates. This is a big contradiction, it's a major challenge in the economy. Our interest rates are about 20%. Now, imagine that you are doing what they call import substitution. You lend money to a company at 20%. A company in the US is getting money at 3%. How can you compete with such a company? How can you export meaningfully? So interest rates have been a major problem in this country. The central bank has used moral suasion, it has not succeeded. This must be addressed. Not in terms of physical terms, but in terms of addressing the productivity in the various sectors in the economy. Without this, interest rates will continue to be where they are. And look at interest rates for the demand lenders, 10% per month. You can't borrow money, and people are borrowing money at that rate at the moment. So this is a major problem. Of course, it's very important for government to continue to provide basic services to prevent death. And this is in government could provide cash to people and firms. And this is not a lot of money. If you have all these companies which are registered in the associations and they are failing to start because they ate all the capital during the coronavirus lockdown, these companies must start. Get the economy around, companies must start. Wage subsidies. Look at the education sector. I know government is trying to do something about that, but that's not, it's not coming through very well. Government must provide tax relief to vulnerable businesses. Government must organizations where they feel that this is going to cause more and more production in the economy. So those are some of the main fiscal and monetary measures. Of course, you can't exhaust them. But how about industrial policies? Government has been talking about import substitution, boo-boo, and so on and so forth. But government has not gone out to be able to systematically select industries to support. What are those industries that we must support? If they have, but it must be systematic effort and say Uganda must be able to produce the following things. For instance, the president maybe in the short run, but in the long run, if you're looking at 10 million units, even if they are simply 2 million units in the country, can you produce them? I know that we are assembling certain equipment here, but what we need to go to be able to say we are producing, especially adding value. So once we select these, which to me should support BUBU, the BUBU policy, buy Uganda, build Uganda policy, government should then avail the funds. Very important, government must address the work ethic. That is work ethic. We have a very poor work ethic in this country. When you add this, the money, the government to syndrome, these are the major. We continue to use very primitive implements in agriculture. There's no way you're going to get this country to get to the middle income status unless if you're for instance, which Kenya and Tanzania have done, like for instance, in terms of how many people in senior management should you bring in the country and for how long? Should you bring people who stay at gates? Should you bring people the things that there are policies that we need to address if we are going to give money to our people and address the issue of poverty. Agriculture policy. This country is capable of feeding the region, but not when you are using the whole. We have 2 seasons a year. Some of our neighbors have 1 season. We have all kinds of people coming to the country buying our maize, our beans. Actually, we're short of beans at the moment because these beans are bought by people from our neighboring countries. We're exporting them also to our neighboring countries. We can feed the region. Uganda can emerge out of poverty through feeding the region. We were in a seminar some time back by the Uganda Investment Authority, and we talked about cassava. You can't believe the power of cassava in this country. In terms of the products that come out of cassava, are we paying attention to it? Are we addressing it? I know that UIA is trying to address that. Select industry to support is about beans. If we produce these, good price. And all they need is a good price. Look at cotton. Farmers need a good price, and they'll give you the cotton. But then go and improve their productivity by changing the implement that they use. And how do you change the implement? Don't wake up in the morning and simply change the implement. Provide the training to them. Provide the support in terms of technical and vocational institutions that support all these. So we must select the industries, we must address the issue of productivity, we must address the issues of work ethic. In our countryside, in the countryside, in our villages, people work for 3 hours. Some people put in up to 16 hours a day. Some people, the 8 to 5 people put in 8 hours. Some people don't even sit there. So we must address the issue of work ethic. Without a good work ethic, really, we're not doing much in terms of getting out of the coronavirus pandemic challenge. we shall continue to address issues. Government must resolve the ideological contradictions in its policies. What do I mean by this? We want jobs in the economy, and so we've attracted investments in the economy. And what is happening right now is that Ugandans are not in business. There's a small number. Ugandans are in lock-up shops. They're in markets. They're on the street, and they're selling products produced by others. Ugandans are not producing goods themselves, because we do respect those who are. So the question is, how do we overcome this? How do we overcome this challenge? Can we see growth in this country that filters down to the ordinary people in the country, that makes people proud that, yes, this is a product produced by Ugandans? I think the Chinese are selling sand in Uganda. They're the ones mining in the Luera and other places. There are foreigners who have taken over landing sites in Lake Victoria and Entebbe. They're the ones now selling sand, not Ugandans. I've said this in one of our forums, that to transport beer in this country, it is done by DHL, transporting beer. And what does that mean? It's simply owning transport vehicles and making sure that the work ethic is right and that you deliver this beer in the right place at the right time as required. Because we have failed, the money going. So look at the poverty. How do you address the issue of poverty if that is what is happening in the economy? So government must address the ideological contradictions that exist in its various policies. If we are going addressing ideological issues, definitely we shall continue to have economic growth, churn out products, churn out services, but without economic development. The ordinary people will continue to walk without shoes. And you don't have to go very far. If you areas, simply because we are failing to resolve the ideological contradictions in our policies in the way government is run. We must address corruption. This money thing, government at Yambe, is a very big problem. This country cannot change. This country cannot grow. You cannot get rid of poverty if you don't address corruption in the country. I have no solution to it, but maybe you or getting rid of corruption in the country. I don't know. Then we must right-size government. There are very many arguments from, years back we had about 6, 10 districts, then 30, then 80, now 120, and they need a salary budget for all this. Councillors need allowances. We have a huge parliament. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've got more constituencies. But this will not be a problem if we, as a country, we're able to produce more and have this side of government that is able to deliver services to the people. Local governments wait for money from government, central government, to be able to do anything. So is this the right size of government? No. I feel it's important. It's too big and too expensive. So what happens when you have to buy every MP a new car at 110 million shillings taxpayers? So these are very fundamental in addressing the issue of poverty. And as we speak now, trying to get out of the pandemic, you hear, I know this is correct, that there are people benefiting from the treatment of COVID patients. If that is true, we have a very big problem. Look at what is happening with elections right now. What is happening right now? The issue of government, the issue of money everywhere. We shall not address the issues of emerging out of poverty. So what should be done? What should government do? Of course, to me, government should select certain sectors in the economy which it wants to grow. You know, I've talked about feeding the region. If that's what we want to do, we must select that. We're talking about import substitution. What do we really need to substitute in terms of our imports? So once we've selected these governments, we must then support them. Support them to grow. There are very many ideas on government ownership of business, government ownership and getting these shares later on to the public. There are many of these things that we need to study and see how do we improve the performance of our economy. We must improve productivity. I said as long as we're using the hoe and those primitive agricultural implements, we cannot compete. I had challenges. I went out to do 40 acres of maize. And, you know, some time back before they got rid of tax. So I had this labor come up and they wanted the money to pay tax. So the first season was fine because February, March, we went on very well and we got a tractor and we had labor. The second season, we didn't get people. We asked why. They said, well, I have no obligation to pay tax, so why should I come to work? You know, attitude to work. Recently, again, I went out to do some maize growing, and I published, and yes, what came out with it, 2.7 million machines came out of that. So when I looked back, I looked at my productivity, and I said, look, there's a problem here. You know, when I'm using a hoe, in Israel, they have equipment, drones, that go and fertilize each individual plant. Where are we as a country in terms of productivity? How can you compete with such a group of people? As I said, government must resolve the issue of what Uganda Airlines was a bold decision. What else do you have to say as government? Government must train cadres and deal with corruption. These two go hand in hand. If you are going to establish public enterprises, you must have people who are cadres who believe in what you're doing to be able to manage it, so that we don't have corruption in these institutions. So these are things that government really must be able to do. And as I end, the ball is in the court of government. Be able to get this economy out of the challenges it has. Government must address the issue of corruption, extremely important. Government must support certain industries, especially, for instance, education. Let everybody in this country have free primary education. I know we are trying in that area, but we need to improve the education. Look at what Germany is doing, so that we don't have dropouts of people who have no skills. This must be incorporated in what we are doing. We must be able to address the issue of interest rates. This needs a study, a major study by the central bank, by all concerned, to find out why is our interest rate so high. The simple rule is interest rates are a few percentage points above inflation. Inflation, as you heard from GSST, continues to be contained. I think it's about 3 to 5%. So bank rates should be about 6 to 8%. interest rates for commercial banks should therefore be about 10 to 13%, but a whopping 20% and above. You know, and even this 13% I'm talking about is a little too on the higher side, you know, compared to the global position. So we must address this. We must select those industries that we want to be able to do business in and we must address the issue of population growth. Yes, we need this market, but you don't need a poor market. You don't need an uneducated market. You need to find a way in which you put people to school. Otherwise, you'll have this massive number of people who have no jobs, who are not educated. So you can't create a middle class. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening to me, but to me, government has a role to play in this. Milton Keynes said, I think I just talked about this recently, during the Great Depression, the economist Milton Keynes said that during the Depression, when the he said, even if you have to ask people to get water from the sea and pour it on the land and pay them to stimulate production, do that. Government must think a lot on how to stimulate the growth in the economy and be able to see that the economy is able to recover. Not only recover, but get out of the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Balunywa. Members, you must agree with me. We really have food for thought. Fortunately, all the people and all the players he has mentioned are included in this forum. Thank you very much once again, Professor Balunywa. We applaud you for that great keynote address. And it's protocol that a keynote address does not attract questions, but being the teacher he is, Professor Balunywa has graciously accepted to take some questions. Before we get into that, I'll ask Secretariat to prepare to handle the question session, but I'd like to give a few housekeeping comments or information. Number one, we have the question and answer tab, and we have the chat tab. Please put your comments and compliments and any jokes you want in the chat tab, and reserve the Q&A tab for questions. This is because if we have the question and answer tab crowded with the long compliments, we might actually lose the questions. Second, and more important, is that we have the pleasure to welcome a sister institute from ICPAR from Kigali, and these are in attendance, and we have CPA Amin Miramago, who is the CEO of ISPA, and directors Sande Kalisa and Joseph Rukara Sali. Join me in welcoming them. Also, I'd like to recognize the second ICPAU president, CPA David Opio Okello. CPA David Opio Okello, you are most welcome to this forum. We always benefit from the wisdom of the elders. So thank you very much, audience. You've been very active in the chat and the question and answer. Can I ask the Secretariat, please, to sort out the questions that will go to Professor Balunywa? Over to you, Secretariat.
Thank you, CPA Edna. There is one, I have an echo, let's first clear that.
Please do.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for your observation on the current situation. IT. Okay. Thank you, Professor, for your observation on the current situation in the country of money without work. This is from Stephen Enabu Etcheku. I think government is partly to blame. As you are very much aware, agriculture is the backbone of our country, but look at the annual budget allocations given this sector. We used to have cooperative societies when we were growing in the Teso and could sell cotton with ease and have regular income, but there is no more. This is a comment, and Professor may wish to comment on it. What could have gone wrong? The same from Stephen. What could have gone wrong that priority is no longer given to this sector, agriculture, which would employ many Ugandans and afford them some level of income and avoid government Yambe syndrome? Otherwise, thank you very much for the elaborate presentation. The second one, from Lydia Nankabirwa. Professor has talked about a waiver of payee and reduction in corporation tax rate from 30 to 20. Where then should the government look to cover this gap if these proposals were to be taken on? I think you can take on those as we look at others.
Thank you very much for those questions. I think Stephen really makes comments. Why is government not supporting?
I can give two more. Okay. Professor, can you share the changes MOBS has implemented or planned to implement in response of it as a case study for others borrow from? This is from the CPA Deseo Mugavi. And from Martin Ngango, Professor Balunywa, we are doomed if government does not fulfill its roles and responsibilities. How can the private sector act as an alternative to government? So Professor can respond to those.
Okay. Maybe so that I don't lose the last questions I had, can private sector act as an alternative to government? Of course it can't. We are very clear in society is driven, or rather divided in very clear sectors. You have government, which has a role. The traditional role of government was police and defense. It has grown since to include public services, and it has grown since to include regulation, support, and so on, and many other things. So the private sector on its own cannot survive without the umbrella of government, either to regulate or to standardize or do things. Just take a case of say university education. The private sector can come in here and establish universities, and you can study for a year and get a degree. You can go to Nkrumah, get a degree certificate. So if there's no government, you can imagine what will happen. Government is important in terms of standardizing and regulating things that happen in a society. Government is important also in providing a ring around individual organizations so that they don't get into problems. So, you know, what happens even when you have to arbitrate when there's challenges between organizations? So you cannot substitute government. But government should be able to do all that's possible to ensure that the private sector thrives, because that is where it gets its taxes which enable it to run. So yes, private sector is very important. It should be the one, and the current government policy is that we have a private sector-led growth. Government should be in the background providing the environment, the atmosphere, the regulation, the laws, and the policies. That's why you're electing members of parliament to do that. What are the changes that MOVES has implemented? CPM Gabi is asking. I'm sorry I have to be cautious because we've not opened because we are waiting for government to give us directives on what to do. I think government is out there trying to assess what it needs to do in terms of preventing infection among students by introducing online teaching and so on and so on and so forth. I'll tell you what we would have done, maybe. What we would have done, which has been on the table for some time now, first of all, we had already gone on online teaching, though it was not very popular, both among students and staff. So it was not new to us. We have many of our staff who have graduated from online universities, their masters, their PhD. So it is not something that is new. We also know the limitations to online teaching, online learning, which is availability of equipment, availability of internet, and then attitudes. Those three things, they tend to determine how you adopt online learning methods. So what did we do? We've been training our staff in this. We've been preparing ourselves in this. We've got equipment, we've got studios to do all this work. So once the COVID came up, we planned, get all our master's students to complete their studies, because we assessed the degree of completion. We had done our work by 70%, so we wanted to do 30% teaching online, and we had capacity to do that and finish it. Our two was to do the third-year students in the bachelor's, teach them online, and we also thought that there are these people who may not be able to study online, so we said those will wait until when we reopen formally, because not everybody will have access. And then we thought that after that, we shall now handle the bulk of the classes, first year, second year. We have about 20,000 students, so this is a huge number of people. And we also thought that if we had been allowed, there are some classes, the smaller classes, which, students could be able to attend. But of course, we didn't know how long this pandemic would last in terms of the lockdown, in terms of the closure. We all knew that the solution to the coronavirus was a cure or a vaccine, and they haven't shown up yet. So we still have a challenge. So what we need to do to go ahead as a country, not as MOVES, as a country. You heard His Excellency the President has talked about radios and TVs for people in the rural areas because of the issue of equipment. The access to electricity in this country, I think 60% urban areas have access, about 18% rural areas have access to electricity. There are people with access to computers, about 1 million people. Those access to phones are 12 million, but doesn't mean they use internet. Well, they use WhatsApp, so in a sense they use internet, but it's not for teaching. It will need money, definitely. It will need some bit of money to be able to implement some of the things that we're looking at. Some of the things we're looking at was going into our campuses up country and expanding them there so that we can have our students who come from Marua. You don't need to come back to Kampala study. We have a campus in Arua. Can we organize teaching in Arua? And if you are teaching online, you can actually teach. At the moment, I've been teaching students in Arua, Mbarara, and Jinja from my Kampala office. So that's possible. We've done it. So CPM Gabi, I hope that answers the question you raised. Lydia, yes, this is the worry. If you reduce taxes, what will happen? The point is that that money is not there. So what is government doing? I remember I was part of the study, I think, which was led by Professor Suluma in the 80s, which led to the recommendation of the closure of CMB. And His Excellency the President raised the issue at that time. That's the highest government. So here's the issue: where are we going to get the money from? We said, look, if you get rid of this CMB, you're going to get rid of corruption, you're going to give a higher price to coffee, you're going to have more production. And it happened. I mean, he took faith and was able to dismantle Coffee Marketing Board, and the economy grew faster. And the taxes that we had lost in simply collecting money from CMB was able to be collected in other areas as a result of the growth in the economy. So there's need for faith. There's need for faith. And in the ideological discussions, those who believe in capitalism believe that lower taxes increase productivity, increase production and incomes in an economy. And that's my belief, that as you lower taxes, you're going to have more people. So this country needs to have more people in the tax bracket at a lesser tax rate. What we are doing is that we are focusing on those few people who are there and taxing them more. So in the process, we are preventing those successful companies from expanding and growing and diversifying their business portfolios. So to me, this reduction, can be modeled. The government has all these economists who can model this and say, if you reduce taxes by this is that you have a larger number of people paying. The higher the tax, the more people want to evade taxes. So this can be modeled, and I'm sure they can find out where the money will come from. But definitely, an increased economic activity is going to give you a higher revenue and higher taxes. And take note, direct taxes in this country are very small. You get most of your money from indirect taxes. And again, this can be looked at because we are saying, can we reduce the corporation tax rate, even VAT, but increase the productivity in the country, the production in the country. So Stephen, what could have gone wrong? No priority in agriculture. This is very sad. It's very, very sad. But again, these are ideological issues. Europe and America subsidize their agricultural production. Farmers in France will go to take their tractors to the roads if they don't get money from government. Some time back, I want you to follow this story. And they had a bumper harvest. And guess what happened? The World Bank came on them and said, you must take out this harvest, this subsidy. So Malawi went back to importing food. Uganda and indeed many African countries are in a similar problem. I want you to go and check the number of countries that were given money once the coronavirus pandemic broke down. How many were they, including Uganda? Why were they given this money? I want you to find out why were they given this money. Where has this money been spent? Will be the other question you need to ask. But most of this money we have is to support our imports. Especially from IMF, we support our imports. And where are you importing these goods from? So Why do you want your agriculture to succeed when you can import? You know, you've seen pineapples in supermarkets imported from Brazil, and so on and so forth. It's a shame that our African countries cannot stand on their feet and say, look, we need to improve the lives of the millions of poor people in our countryside by giving them a better price. And the result is that we cannot produce. We are very high cost producers, and therefore we cannot succeed. So again, it goes to the issue of resolving the ideological contradictions in our governments. If we don't resolve that, if our leaders do not address these ideological contradictions, we shall continue to have economic growth in the country, but not economic development. And economic development means that 70% of people in the rural areas who are in agriculture must have higher incomes, must be able to pay fees for their children in schools, must be able to wear new shoes, not old shoes. That's what it means. So I hope Stephen I've been able to answer that. I think back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Professor. And everybody join me in applauding the professor. We could have had him the whole day, actually, because I could see he was still going very strong and the questions were still coming. But in the interest of time and in sticking with our agenda, I'd like to close the session now. Thank you once again, Professor Balunywa, and please do stay with us.
Thank you very much.
Because you may be able to enrich the rest of our discussions. I want to thank the Secretariat for giving me the opportunity to chair this session and turn the discussion back to you to organize for the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CPA Edna. We are now going to the next session, which is the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on trade and commerce recovery measures. And our session chair is CPA Charles Oguttu, partner PKF Uganda. He will introduce the speaker for the day. So CPA Charles Oguttu, you are welcome.
Thank you, John. And welcome to the next session, which is impact of COVID-19 pandemic on trade and commerce and recovery measures. My name is Charles Oguttu, partner with PKF Uganda, and I'll be chairing this session. I'm sure right from the beginning in the morning, we have had quite loaded presentations from Patrick and then the professor, giving us a lot of insights into this COVID. Believe that at the beginning of the year or close of last year, all of us had the different plans for 2020. But now here we are trying to deal with COVID-19. We have had to readjust our priorities to ensure we move forward. Just on a lighter moment, this COVID from the presenters, there are opportunities and there are a number of lessons which we learn and we keep learning. There was one on a lighter note on social media, which gave a caption of 80 people seated in a room, and they only realized there were 8 and many in a room during the total lockdown. Initially, they would come at different times, and each one either retires on the mattress or some within the same room. And then they leave at different times. So during this total lockdown, they found 80 people seated in the same room, staring at one another. That's when they realized there were too many. They had to do something to get a bigger space. So these are some of the challenges and learning points at individual levels. So to handle this topic, we are privileged to have a very experienced presenter. He's a friend of the Institute. He has been with us on a number of occasions whenever he's called upon. He's none other than Mr. Everist Kayondo. Mr. Everist Kayondo is a qualified professional teacher. He qualified a diploma in education and later on attained a degree. He went on to get a master's in commerce from South Africa. So he's really a qualified business person and highly respected. And I'm sure you have heard him in a number of circles during this pandemic, giving a number of speeches and comments. Currently, he's chairman KACITA. He also chairs the Association of Tour Operators in Uganda. And I'm sure when the professor was giving his speech, he gave one of the captions, aeroplanes grounded. And these airplanes normally bring in the tourists. So he has a lot to share with us from the practical aspect, how they're faring and how they are facing these challenges. He also chairs PTA for St. Henry Kitov College, and all of you will agree what the education sector is also experiencing. I think he's a person who has a number of practical sessions to share with us today. So I'm really privileged and honored to invite Mr. Everist Kayondo to share with us on this topic, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on trade and commerce, and later on shares with us possible recovery measures. So you're welcome.
Oguttu and you for that before I get started and the opportunity, I think our administration unmute those
Hello, Mr. Everist, are you on?
there is some
okay, sorry about that.
Check and so I can disturb my presentation. I thank you very much for the opportunity as CPA for presenting the from the trading perspective. The chairman also does. So this you are much aware. Trading sector and the so mission all sector, and I thank you for such a those are both of them are my docket. But I'll share the also something about the tourism sector. We can be together to share a point presentation, and I think we shall be able to move together. So there are a few slides which we are going to go through, and starting with that presentation of myself that but that one is now already done. So the background of my presentation is about the I will start with the background, the economic impact of the political impact. impact on trade and commerce, and suggested interventions for recovery measures, and I'll go to the conclusion. The background that the pandemic started in China, even Professor Balunywa has already alluded to that. But China is really our major source of this. You should be aware that about 30% of our merchandise which we deal in Uganda is actually sourced from China. So when that started, that was the major worry. We are only lucky that the timing of the disease is actually this is something which came during January, and coming to know about usually the year we have a lunar year. China has a lunar year. Execute all of the orders before they conclude the year. That start a new year when there is no new order. The orders have already been loaded on the high seas, and they should be coming. So this explains why we didn't have shortages of goods, even all the orders were already coming, and usually the time is 6 months. 3 months, which we take to do, that is 1 month for 1 month for the travel on the IC, and about 6 or 2 weeks to move from Mombasa to Uganda.
Mr. Kayondo,
that was an opportunity. Only orders that were affected were those who were supposed to be after New Year ceremony. These days we have
Mr. Kayondo, we keep losing your voice.
Online goods as they should have been. Then that I think high. So total lockdown happened in March on trade, and right now we talk. This is what we are grappling with, and is indeed affecting us very much. Then when it comes to the economic impact, I've tried to get figures from UBOS and URA, and have these figures with, and it is indeed affects. And it is locked down except those which we are dealing in essential commodities. And definitely the general decline of the GDP, which had estimated earlier at 6%, has now reduced to 3.1%, which is on a low side. But if you disaggregate again this figure, because it's the weighted average, you'll find that this figure again doesn't tell you the entire picture. First quarter of 2019-2020, the picture, the growth was at 6.5. So total local employment, as it was depicted by Dr. Mus, was the final blow on trade and the economic advisor. And now, right now, the second quarter was also not bad. The third quarter came, or even the fourth quarter ended up in a negative. So you can find that this 3.1% is actually the weighted average. If you look at the stock exchange and how it has been affected, if you look at the screen, you have 5 5,490 trade in billions of. I've tried to weighted average, but again doesn't tell you the entire picture. The first quarter, billion came down to 1,400. May was 500 billion trading, 208 billion for June, and July was just 272 billion. So you can see then in the Uganda stock exchange, and you can imagine how it has impacted on our economy. So the CBA and definitely this has been reduced by Bank of Uganda from even the first quarter 9% to 7%. But again, if you look at this one, has it impacted on the interest rate? The answer is no, because we find that this one is now availing more funds for the commercials. But when it comes to the real impact and as to whether the second quarter, this percentage will be determined mainly by the rate at banks, the trade bonds and security bonds are trading. So what government is actually looking is actually the weighted average. This is the major determinant of the on lending which will prevail in the commercial banks. So the CBR don't help to the matters. The interest rate has remained up there. And the imports, the figures are depicted here. They have oscillated between January and July, and I've got these from Uganda Revenue Authority, where we are trading at 30 billion, 30,000 billion, 28 March came down to 27, 15 billion, and 18 billion. So imports, you see, have also been down just during this this period. Then exports also, because there were 336 billion, 304 for February, then 206 for March, 264 for March. April came down to 1,400 in April, and 90 for June, and 70 for May, and for July. And definitely URA has also suffered a deficit and a decline for the same period if you compare the figures of URA 2019 and 2020, where even the estimates were supposed to go higher. And when it comes to loans, definitely most of them is structured according to what Bank 8% of the loans have been restructured just because people couldn't pay on time. I've tried to draft that curve, and that one is showing how the decline, how the trade on your stock exchange nosedived up there in July. And this is how you can see that curve and how it has so the exports, I think you can see the 2019 blue line vis-a-vis the 2020 brown line. And you will see that the exports have remained down. Yes, there has been a higher peak from May going forward, but this one is mainly depicting coffee, not much. And when you go down to imports, again, the imports for 2019 have depicted the blue line vis-a-vis the brown line of the imports. And you will find that, yes, we had started on a higher note from January to February, but when it came to the COVID period, it declined from March, April, and May. And when the lockdown was opened, that is from June, this is when the figures are now catching up with those of the previous year. But all along, we have been that low down there. So definitely as a result of coronavirus, you can see that the banks have restructured the loans. However, even when they have, and the only problem that they have continued to, and that one is Uganda's part of the loans. You can see the 2019 brown line has remained down. Going forward, this will not happen of accruing interest. URA has also rescheduled the payment of some companies which have accelerated, and they pay even when they have accrue the interest during the period. Businessmen who have will not happen of accruing the payment. If you just reschedule, that means you are. But at the same time, some of these people are no longer earning, and these are undergoing. Yes, even NSSF with some companies which are downsizing, like again, they have also suffered a similar fate, and they have also applied for NSSF. They can have a chance of paying after. The operations of businesses, especially the non-SA, entirely might not have stopped, but definitely, again, they were also impacted on, and we have seen the small businesses eating up their own capital, and there is job loss, and even some parastatals, to our surprise, have downsized, where which is government-owned, had also to cut their employees, which would run resilient companies, and it is a very big blow to the So the biggest foreign exchange earner, which is tourism, is grounded to a halt. We don't have business for the last 7 months. And as I can assure you, because if the airports remain closed, if the borders are closed, it's very difficult for this tourism to flourish. And to give you an insight, the economy of Uganda is where government between has been injecting 0.1% to 0. URA has also which are case by case, but most important of the budget undergoing with some which has been contributing GDP change inflows, which means that the injection is so small, but when it which was very also, and it is a very big foreign exchange earner, which is towards, and as I can assure you, borders are closed. It's very big. Uganda is 8 to 0.4%. Tourism has been contribution, means that the injection, while the second foreign exchange earner, which is coffee, could have gone up and may have improved, but again, the remittances, which is extension to the disposable income, because most of these diaspora remittances end up in the rural areas where people actually have an income of sorts where they can also have effective merchandise. So in a way, effective demand and rural aggregate demand has declined because of this decline in diaspora remittances. And the non-traditional exports like flowers, horticulture have suffered also a devastating blow. They can't move because definitely we are out and finished. Some businesses have also completely transformed. We have heard of schools which have closed, and now they are becoming rentals. People have turned schools into something else because they can't continue paying for rent because they were in rentable premises, and now the landlord wants rent, but again, you cannot pay, you cannot move, you cannot get any school fees coming because the schools have hitherto closed. So we have also social, political, and the political impact of coronavirus because of the less movement of people. Sales have also dwindled, transport is not there, and the spirits and the beer sellers are also suffering a very big blow. Incidentally, there is a link between beer selling and even agriculture, because those who are dealing in sorghum, they are buyers from the breweries, and those who are rearing animals like P1 ghee, they are also buying the residues from the factories, of beer factories. So at the end of the day, even those who are rearing the factories of beer factories are also having problems and challenges of getting this supply. And on the other hand, the farmers who are dealing in sorghum do not have demand for their products. Then the sugar surplus has been declined, and people are restricting their demand strictly to essential commodities. And even those who are dealing in drugs, in fact, we have shared, our members are saying those who are having pharmaceuticals, they are saying people are buying main instead of going for the substantive rights which are supposed to deal with their treatment. Government have when they were to provide the essential items, and when we were back from flour and beans, so they were working with us, and that they so we have shared. Our members are saying because in fact, we have shared. Our members are saying those who are having
Mr. Kayondo, we have lost you completely.
going for the substantive which are supposed to deal with their elements. These tenants from the rentals are also suffering more salary as if their enterprise are no longer and them salaries, and the landlord demands were not, and most of them relocating from premises to another. And by the way, and to the community another very in the future. And this she said habits, and then I think we have had also suiciding a new norm. New norm usually complaining about why people don't go to church on Sunday. Now, when I met my chairman of the laity at the church on Sunday, one of these days, was asking me what I had gone to what they had remained at the church on Sunday. Now, to church on Sunday is something which is odd. Now, coming down to the impact on trade and commerce, then definitely I have some of them have been highlighted in the mainstream of the economy, but definitely closing down, we have the number of transactions which are happening. We are very soon in the future doing well. The imports have, and the state also happening, and businesses are closing, and capital people have in capital during this lockdown, and it is a nightmare for them again gone for the loan restructuring. Interest has been a very big challenge, and it's going forward, we are going to see more defaults, and non-loans will be the result. And this is partly the reason why banks are saying for them they are going to keep their interests high, because the risk is higher. And this is where it is a catch-22, because we are saying if you expected people to continue paying interest and you are accruing interest even during the period of lockdown when they are not using our money, then this is what we are getting also happening. And business, we should let them not accrue interest for the period of lockdown. Then the landlords are also asking for rent for a period which we have closed, and we are seeing default along those lines. But those who are not who decide which wanted to lock the premises and they wanted to have the money for the period of lockdown before somebody could enter his premises. Some of them have ended up taking over the merchandise of their tenants. And for the others who managed to get, that is the tenants who managed to get their merchandise out of the way before the landlords could wake up, then they have now done a new review. They are selling their merchandise for the shops. And we see the streets along the streets along Nachivo Road. They are busy with the vehicles. People are selling from their vehicles, their pickups, and they are selling merchandise. What they are paying for is actually a parking fee is it Greenbond or another collector for parking fee. They are taking fee, put their merchandise, and they are not observing the SOPs. They are doing business, and they are now running out from rent. So informal business will continue. And by the way, getting up with them, and as we look at URA expecting to get one for has been big, and non-performing loans will now those who were formal are becoming more informal. Then that one then some got rotted during the banks are saying for them it became a problem for those to and became outdated, and with some we had floods which happened with some the merchandise also got some others got expired. So people are now completely lost. They don't know what to do. Because if they got rotten, is saying they are scheduled. When do you recap? So it is a very big challenge. That's why I said non-performing loans up there, they are going to grow very soon, and you will see more of our properties being taken over. Others, the schools are not opened, and of course, with the schools not opening, that has another impact on the trade and the commerce, because some the agriculture, those who are dealing in the cereals, they are major foods which were specifically sold, like those who order goods. So you remember we had Easter during the lockdown, we had the ED during the lockdown, but those orders which were supposed to answer those to cater for those specific seasonal goods, definitely now they are outdated. Even if you open today, these people will not be able to market their goods. They will not be able to sell because the ED will not be here. again, Easter will not be here until maybe next year. And if there were good address for the specific that is 2020, again, you will find a big tale of these as obvious. Then economy, which remains, include also church and the bus, tours and travel, which again are still suffering because we talk now. Think tours and travel companies to pay again accruals for the last 7 years. You are accumulating interest, but these ones are not. What do you expect? Gyms are closed, and these are also having a lot of implications because some people were cutting weight using those gyms. Now you can imagine. So, and by the way, there's also a section that you cannot create demand if some of the sectors are closed, if some parts of the country are closed, like the border districts are still closed. Definitely demand can't, aggregated demand will also come out because part of those people, part of that demand from that side, part of the commerce which would have been taking place along those lines are not actually there. And then we have also the tertiary, these sectors which are closed, those which are not in a product, primary or secondary production. They are mainly in tertiary production, and the tertiary production usually is the major driver of the economy, because usually when you go for primary production without secondary production, you must see that the economy is not doing well. So those sectors of the major sections of the economy which are still closed are in the tertiary sector, and definitely you should expect this one to impact very hard on the economy generally. The central bank rate has reduced, as I mentioned earlier, but again, the banker interest rates are still up there because of competing with the bank of the central government. Because again, for the central bank, central government, sorry, the commercial, they find it comfortable to lend to non-risk-free government other than lending to the public. And now that given this trend where we are also doubtful as private sector practitioners, it is very difficult for us to expect to compete with the government. Definitely, the risk is higher even now that if you are to lend to the public sector, so private sector. So banks have restructured their loans, but again, the accrual bit of it is also a very big problem. Then the method of sourcing goods have also changed. People who used to travel to China are now using e-commerce, and they are sourcing through e-means, which would have been very good. But some of these countries are not easy, like China. For first order, they will send you the orders you ordered it. But second order and the third order, you cannot be very so sure. You have to be so sure. And definitely some of these goods which will be sent at the third order will not meet the standards, and you will see people closing down because of some orders which will be substandard, which you cannot dispose of, which you cannot sell. Others are sourcing through agents, so Ugandans who are positioned in China, in the street sales, people are saying they are paying for. Is that what? No. It's but definitely this one is not the merchandise or some others outside completely the trade sector. And when you say non-performing more of our schools are not open to us because some of their major sources. Then other like those who are devoted, remember we had the specifications of the goods with others, and at the end of the day, you are comparing and before you know it, duplicate your goods very easily. And remember, some these are sectors which are brands which are specifically ours, which are been registered under our name. Other sectors, as opposed to where we are doing only trade, and you could only diversify by opening up more branches or opening up branches from different towns or getting agents for the same goods. Then the government has also emphasized on import substitution, and there is also tax structures, and our traders have also suffered, those who were importing some goods which are geared towards the area where government wants us to go private. That is import substitution. We are getting challenges. Again, there is a bit of protectionism which is happening for the local producers, and there is a very big fear that some of these could easily end up producing some monopolists for some goods, given the challenges we are facing. I put up some suggestions so that which the interventions which government can work on, or as we private sector can work on, so that we can address those challenges of coronavirus and to overcome the impact of coronavirus. We are saying government should reduce on public expenditure, especially the recurrent expenditure. Why should we have the largest parliament in Africa? Why should our parliament be the size of the parliament of India? That one is an area which we should address, such that if government can reduce on the public expenditure and spend more in capital expenditure, that could be part of the remedies which could help us lower a smaller cabinet, no cities to be created, the districts should not be demarcated further. These are the areas which we are thinking that could help, that now we are struggling, as the government shouldn't be seen also extravagant in public expenditure. Then we are also, I'm also suggesting that the government should reduce on internal borrowing, because as they are borrowing much more internally, they are crowding us, the private sector, and we can't compete with the government. This is why the money, even the money which they got from IMF at 0% interest rate, they are now lending it at 14% through UDB. So we again going through the roof, and it is on a high side. But going for the commercial banks loans, again, you will find it in 20s and maybe so these are very high figures, and we are saying borrow maybe from maybe they can help. That could be very much helpful. Economic stabilization should be used for the for that purpose, for the for economic stabilization. What is happening? Several and about the modalities of dispersing these funds, but again they are ending up through UDB. UDB is saying if you want to access this money, you have to first borrow, and the part of the money which you have borrowed will be the grant, and the other portion will be the loan. So for those who are not interested in the loan, but they want to recover, they don't have a chance. And there are some, especially in the sector, which could be helped that these companies in the tourism sector don't close. Once there is an opening, there will be an opportunity for these ones to take over. Then the import substitution should also be supported by creating industries as well as more incubation centers. It should create monopoly. So the incubation centers will help upcoming entrepreneurs to go to these establishments because the machinery will be important, and who have ideas run the machineries for the production purpose. There is also a need to address the cost of production, and if the fuel is still up there, and we are looking at government as a captive tax from electricity, fuel services, these are and they impact negatively on the cost of production. Funding is still high, that is, cost of financing is very high. If electricity is still high and the fuel costs are very high, how do you expect the trading community to compete and to do the import substitution, which you as government is cherishing? These are the challenges we think to be addressed very seriously, and going forward, we should see something happening, that import substitution, and it shouldn't be for all products. Let the government come out specifically to address some areas, because now, like one vehicle which was produced in Makerere, you can't produce one vehicle when Japan is producing so many, when other countries are producing so many, where they are already efficient at the production. We should go to areas where we have competitive advantage and ensure that we can also get even raw materials locally, and then we ensure these are the areas which should do import substitution. Otherwise, import substitution can't complete the imports and all the imports, and we stop all the imports. It can't, because it has never even happened elsewhere in the world. Even in those European countries, developed countries, even USA, they are still importing from other countries. Then other suggestions, government should stop importing importers. This is a very big problem, because much as government is interested in seeing us, who is the traders, who are stopping to import. Why should we import Chinese to come to Uganda and they start importing? Please bring Chinese or Indians who are ready to establish businesses here, and make sure that there is also a portion partly owned by Ugandans. The challenge we have, if they are owning 100% of these enterprises, they will make these remittances and we shall remain with nothing. And some of them have enjoyed even tax holidays, which will be very dangerous for the economy. I can give you an insight, members. If you look, Chair, at even the ESC Common Market Protocol, we Ugandans, if you are establishing a business from Kenya and you want to establish one from Kenya, you will be allowed to own 100% here. Like the shop, there is a Nakumat, they were owning 100% here. Then there is another one which closed, I don't remember, but they were owning 100%. When Ugandans try to go to Tanzania or to Kenya to establish business, they will be forced to relinquish 30% of their equity to the locals, and even at that level of ESC. Now, why should we allow these companies, the multinationals, to own 100%, and we don't have the local content Ugandans also owning part of this investment, such that there is a chance of sharing on the dividends? If they declare the dividends, then we should see something happening on our side. That is Ugandans also sharing. And with some, yes, there is also need to support low-hanging fruits. like tourism companies. I can't emphasize this one because these are already under very hard times. But we are saying if life comes back to normal, these are the areas which are going to peak very quickly. Are going to get the much investment in them, but at least these companies should remain. Let them keep the staff, let them keep the skills. Let us not kill skills, so that going forward, once we open up, we shall have somewhere where to start. Then let government come out and intervene in the contractual matter where the restructuring of the loans is owing interest. We are saying seriously, if we have these supervised financial institutions by Bank of Uganda, that matter of accrued interest, I have given you the example where Stanbic, in the last 6 months, they have made a net profit of 169.2 billion. And they are saying now they are not doing well because last year during the same period, half year, they had 182.8 billion. Now, for them, they are making billions at the expense of Ugandans who are completely making negative. And this is where we are saying either there is a local equity investment or the accrue of interest. Because for them, they are crying off making reduced profits, but for us, we are crying off business closure. So this is why we are saying accrue of interest during the lockdown period should be waived. And even for the rent period, the rent for those landlords who accrued the rent during that period should also be waived for the businessmen who actually that period, the businessmen who actually was completely locked down, and we are completely agreement. Why should governments just sit down and take an observer status instead of coming and intervene this control for those? Then in my conclusion, Chair, I'm saying, look, there is why should governments lock down? But for us, because of the rising cases, but for us, we are saying there is no need of another lockdown. Let us learn how to live with the disease. The disease has come. We, after all, locked down before the disease was here. And now, by the time we opened, we hadn't even suffered a single death. So, other than thinking about closing the business, and we see the repercussions of the closure and how it has negatively impacted on the trade and the commerce, we are saying don't please close down. Let us observe the SOPs. Let us learn how to live with the disease. Let us fight against its spread and rapid spread. And then, as our scientists are also working on the prevention, that is is it called immunization? We should also learn how to live with the disease. And if we start living with the disease and we know how positively we can live with it, and those who have caught up the disease, then they can go get the treatment, such that the government has prepared where to get this treatment done. As KACITA, we have come out with a software which will detect people's movement, and it is called coronavirus tracer. And we are marketing it to the government. If Minister of Health buys it in, we shall be good to go, and it will be helpful. Just scan, and once you scan and indicate people you have been in contact with, it will be very easy to track whoever came close to you. Just in case you fall sick, your traceability or trace of the contacts will be very easy for everybody. And that will be the way to go. And these are the areas which we are proposing. So with those so many remarks and so few remarks, Chair, I beg to stop here. And if there are any questions, I'll be ready to take them on. I thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you, everybody.
I think on behalf of the Institute and our fellow members who are attending the forum, we really thank you, Mr. Kayondo Everist, for the thoughtful presentation. And we appreciate your time and effort in preparing this presentation. Please accept our thanks in this regard. Quite a very informative presentation. I think there is a lot right from the beginning. There is a lot which possibly the government needs to take on if we are together to fight this pandemic and we move forward. So this time we shall allow a few questions. I think we have quite enough time. If you have burning questions, please, you are invited. You can put them on Q&A. We shall pick them from there. I will just briefly check what is there and possibly pass it over to you. I don't know whether this was for you, but one question was, with the continuous high cost of money for business, what should the government do? We have seen Bank of Uganda try to regulate, but has failed. What are the alternatives for government? Because even the money in UDB is not easy to access for most of the businesses. Please, if you have questions, feel free to put them on the Q&A. We shall pick them from there. Mr. Kayondo, are you on?
Chair, should I answer that one, or
yeah, I think you can.
Some other questions.
Yeah, you can answer that one as we wait for others.
Yeah, with the high cost of money, that is part of the complaint which you have. Because even Professor Balunywa in his presentation, he talked about the high cost of money, where commercial banks are lending at about 20%, 18%, those which are low. But again, if you look at the CBR, which is at 7%, that means they are getting, if they are running to Bank of Uganda, they will not get it at that high price. So that means there is availability of funds. But at the same time, the challenge we have, we are competing with the private sector, the public sector at 12% at how much, and that is when they are trading in the treasury bonds and treasury bills. They are already up there. This is why the price can't come down. That's why our advice is the money should be gotten from outside by the public sector. But going forward for the companies which are collapsing, there is a challenge. We are saying if they are going for UDB, UDB is going to go through the formal loan appraisal, which is not very easy, and they will need a collateral because you are taking up a loan. So that will be very difficult for people, for all of us to access the loan. Either some of us have already pledged our collateral with other banks because we are already operating with other loans, or there is no collateral for such, and even the money, some of the companies don't need that much money. But going forward, I think there is a need to support certain sections of the enterprises, like the ones I have given. We have 300 companies, about 300 companies in tourism. And these are the ones which have been doing the magic, and they have been fetching 10% of the GDP and 25% of the exchange inflows. They are accounting for it. Why don't you support these ones by taking on their employees, pay directly the salaries, help them to pay rent, and ensure that they don't close the shop. Saying that there is direct injection, as we have subsidies in those developed world where they're starting agriculture. That would be a direct subsidy, and it shouldn't be tagged on a loan that you must first access a loan, you must first apply a loan from UDB in order to access this money. So the alternative is direct injection of money into enterprises so that they don't completely close down.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kayondo, for that response. There's also another interesting one. In the presentation, one of the way forward you had actually indicated the government should discourage importers. So there's also a question from Stephen Etieku. He's saying, starting by thanking you. Thank you, Mr. Kayondo, for your presentation. As you rightly put it, one of our major trade partners is China, where virtually all our business people import from. However, in one of His Excellency, the President's address on COVID, he did point out that we have turned out to be a clearing market for some of these countries' product by stocking all our kids with their product, hence overlooking our locally produced products. In other words, this should stop in light of what COVID has done, and we support the boo-boo policy. How is KACITA responding to this call in the short, medium, and long-term run? I think you can answer that as others come. You can answer that one, respond to that one. Mr. Kayondo, are we with you? Mr. Kayondo, are you on?
I'm sorry, I've been unmuted, but I'm saying if I'm allowed to continue with the boo-boo policy, KACITA is in total support of policy, and we are in total support of locals producing, and we buy our own. Incidentally, the challenge which we have and which we need to address, one is the cost of production. We need to address ourselves with the cost of electricity. We need to address ourselves with the cost of funding, that is of financing. The cost of money is still high, because we shouldn't just buy and we look at internally, we look at our own market. Look at the ESC market, because as much as we are looking at boo-boo, we are already in the common market, and the Kenyans, Tanzanians, they are also producing for the same ESC market. And if we are not efficient in Uganda, we shall be swept by the goods which are coming from our neighborhood. This is the area. That's why if we add cost of production, we shall be good to go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kayondo. There is also this one. You can just give your comment, Mr. Kayondo. What is this? Incidentally, doesn't have the sender is coming from Galaxy. Mr. Kayondo, what is your take on government reducing the taxes for selected sectors and paying to boost productivity? I think this was touched on by the professor earlier. So what is your take on this?
Chair, you taxing of what? There is a tax of what?
Okay, let me repeat. what is your take on government reducing taxes for selected sectors and payee to boost productivity?
Okay, reducing. Okay, put it, and I didn't want to repeat it. If they reduce taxes on certain items, yes, I'm saying if there is a reduction of taxes, government is actually creating disposable income, and once we have disposable income, we shall expect aggregate demand to go up. And once aggregate demand goes up, definitely we have a chance of those who are in the business to flourish because they will be having a market. Yeah, it's not enough to just talk about the big population in the EAC. It's not enough. If we talk about just big population, which population doesn't have effective demand, that will not be good enough. We need a population which is big, but again, which has the capacity to buy and has disposable income. That is the effective demand should be there. So once the taxes are, because government usually uses both the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. That would be one of the fiscal policies which
Hello? Are you on, Mr. Kayondo?
the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. That would be one of the fiscal policy by the moderator to do better. But I am on and have taxes. I thought I was on.
Okay, there is some break, I think, in the voice, possibly the internet.
Should I repeat it? Should I repeat the answer?
I think repeat because you are, I think there are some breaks in the voice.
Oh, okay. What I'm saying, because if government reduces taxes on some items, that would be very good because if government reduces, because usually government, in order to boost aggregate demand, it has both to use either fiscal policy or monetary policy. But one of the fiscal measure is reducing the taxes. Yes, I'm saying government is actually to boost about 160 million people for the EAC. Just big numbers are not big enough until we have looked at their capacity to buy, that is the effective demand. And we are looking at the aggregate demand from the point of view of disposable income. So if this big population doesn't have disposable income, definitely we shall not sell. So one of ensure that production growth, that's by addressing the issue of aggregate demand. Good, one of the measures to help out just big numbers aggregate demand to revamp, to bring back the economy back to its rate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kayondo. There is also one from Martin. He's saying, how far is KACITA with the negotiations with the landlords? They are holding on to debtors' property even after they want to vacate their rentals.
We seriously, on the serious note, in the first place, KACITA tried to go through the committee which is supposed to coordinate these activities at the Prime Minister's office, and we wrote a letter. This letter had 4 proposals for government to use one of the methods to help the tenants to overcome the issue of accrued rent during the period of lockdown. So one of the proposals was government can use the money which they have got from international communities like IMF, like World Bank and the European Union, and they get a portion of it, about $50 million, and they pay off the landlords for the period of lockdown, so that the landlords don't ask this money from the tenants who were not working. Because by implication, if you are expecting these tenants to pay, then that means for you, you continued earning when everybody was not earning. So this is a common problem, and we thought government can use it as alternative one, use that money which was brought in to stabilize the economy and pay off the landlords so that there is no payment from the tenants. Number 2, we gave them alternative number 2, and that alternative 2 was to use rental income tax to settle the rental bills. That is, instead of the landlord, instead of making a return and pay rental income tax at the end of the year, the government can waive this rental income tax for 2020. And once the landlords make a returns, they are not supposed to pay rental income tax for their premises. And that would also trickle down to the tenants, such that the tenants are not supposed to pay for that period, because after all, it was waived from the rental income tax. That obligation was taken away, which was waived by government. And we thought that was alternative 2, which was again in the dockets of the government. Number 3, we said, what about looking at the accruals? Because again, landlords are saying they obtained loans from the banks, and that's why there is no way they can waive this rent, because even banks had not restructured by then. And when they restructured, they said they had accrued the interest. We said, now, if government can come out and pronounce themselves and say, please, banks don't accrue interest for the period of lockdown, and this waiver would come down to the landlords, and they would not have an excuse, because their loans have already been restructured, and then the rental accrual is not accrued, the interest is not accrued. Therefore, landlords will not be having any excuse of asking for rent for the period of lockdown. The 4th alternative was for the government to pronounce that all the sectors that are affected, all the sectors didn't work. So it would be like there is no deferring of pay as you earn, no deferring of NSSF, no deferring of or accruing of interest, and then the rentals wouldn't be deferred, and everybody would have been, that is, all parties would have been their contribution, that is, the blood which they contributed to the coronavirus pandemic. That would be their contribution, and this would be temporarily frustrated agreements all across, such that KACITA does not also ask for ground rent, or you ask us to come, all of us, on table and ensure that everybody puts his claim on the table, and finally we agree on the best way to resolve this. And this would have been the best way to resolve it if other alternatives had failed. But government just kept quiet. President never pronounced anything on himself, The committee has always been quiet about it, and nobody has reverted to us. So the next thing what has happened is to see street battles all over, street battles, and what KACITA has done is to go to court. Up to now, our court case is there, and we are inviting the trading community, not even trading community alone, all tenants who are affected to come and join the case, be part of the case, and we make sure that landlords actually don't accrue rent, don't sit on our product, don't take over the property of or merchandise of the tenants, and we make our case hard. So the case is already there. KACITA has already sued, and we are only waiting for whoever can join the case to make sure that we substantiate the matter and it is adjudicated in the courts of law. But that was a last resort. We thought we would get a political solution on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Kayondo. No doubt you have a lot on your plate. There is this last one, possibly I can just comment on it. That's from David. There are a lot of trade disorder. Traders have resorted to trade along road reserves. What is your take on this?
The issue of trade order is part of our major concern, and we are a result of trade order as KACITA. We are a result of trade order because that is something we cherish. But always what has happened, people have continued politicizing this issue. That the voters always on the streets, that people who are in the premises, who are in gazetted places, who are trading for markets, they don't vote. Because you find somebody who is advocating for the street vending and its continuity and its flourishing is actually the politicians. So whenever we come out and we try to ensure that street vending is stopped, there is trade order. People are supposed to trade from gazetted places. Then we are only frustrated by the politicians. In fact, KCCA, usually the directors, the executive directors, they have been in total support and they have always helped us.
Hello, you are off. Hello, Mr. Kayondo.
Madam Sisu has gone back to the shops, but he wants these people to be working on the street, and it has become a political game where people are now using the street, the men and the women who are working on the streets. For them, they know that they will also go to the politicians in shops, they are in the markets, they are trading from gazetted places, but at the same time, the protection is coming from the politicians, and the KACITA is very much concerned. This is why we are not happy with what is going on. But right now, it has become another issue where people have failed to pay for rent, and now they are putting the merchandise vehicles and they are trading from the streets, that is from the boots of their vehicles. Others who have pickups, they have the tray of their pickup, that's where they are trading from. And life continues. They pay a few coins to the law enforcers, that is KCCA law enforcers, and they are good to go, because when you compare the expense they are suffering vis-a-vis the rental they would have paid, the income tax, being subject to paying electricity, and all of these conditions, now the SOPs, no observation. Now I think this is why it's flourishing. Now, and if we move from the month of September and we go up to December, you will see the whole of Kampala will be one biggest market in the whole world.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kayondo. I think we'll appreciate you have quite a lot on your plate. First of all, as a business person, a landlord, and the chair of a number of business associations, we thank you on behalf of the Institute.
And if we move from the best market in the whole world.
Yeah, we appreciate your time you have shared with us, and we thank you on behalf of the Institute for sparing time to be with us. So,
hello, Chairman.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Kayondo. Hello, Mr. Kayondo, the floor is yours.
Hello, Chairman.
Yes, you can go ahead.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Chairman.
Yes. We are extending our appreciation on behalf of the Institute for the time you set aside to be with us, given
yes,
the...
please, have you had my first answer?
Yes, we had.
About trade order?
Yes, we had. Hello, Mr. Kayondo, are you on?
Chair.
Yes, we are hearing you. Hello, Mr. Kayondo. We have heard your response. So on
yes, Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Kayondo. Yeah, we can hear you, Mr. Kayondo. We can hear you. You are on. Hello, Mr. Kayondo, you are on.
Hello, Chairman.
Yes. Can you hear us? Can you hear me? Hello? Mr. Kayondo, can you hear me?
Question and answer.
Hello? Okay, we were extending our appreciation on behalf of the Institute for the time you set aside to be with us and to give us that insightful presentation. Given the heavy schedule you have, given the prevailing circumstances, we appreciate your commitment to the Institute. Thank you. So we shall be moving on to the next session. And this one is normally to wrap up the events of the day. And this is none other than Mr. Ramadan Ngovi. So Mr. Ramadan, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and all the participants. I am delighted once again to be part of this conversation, a conversation on a very important topic or theme about the economic recovery of the pandemic, of the impact of the COVID pandemic. And I think this is the first of the kind, an online CPA Economic Forum. I have a few things to note. However, I was still making the slides. I will not be able to share slides today. I will share them later. However, some of the key items which come out at the peak of this conversation, we've had a total of 235 participants, of whom the 27 were designated as panelists, including Secretariat, and then the attendees were...
Hello. Yes, please.
Mr. Kayondo, you can mute your mic. Thank you very much. So the attendees were
I am on, please, Chair. I'm on. I can hear you now.
Hello, we had lost you a bit. Are you on?
Am I on? Chair,
hello, Mr.
It's so good.
Mr. Kayondo, are you on? Hello, Mr. Kayondo.
Chairman, should I continue?
I think you can continue. I think he must be an experienced disturbance in his internet. You can continue.
All right, thank you very much. So I was saying that we've had at the peak at 10:45 a.m. a total of 235 members who were participating, including those who were designated as panelists, 27, including the Secretariat, as well as attendees, 210. That's what it showed me. So there must be extra 2 members who...
I was just asking whether...
Kindly,
I think I'm done.
Can management sort out Mr. Kayondo?
Possibly can the institute reach out to him and explain to him?
Thank you. So we started the forum at 9 a.m. sharp with the CPA Edna Rugumayo chairing the first session, and Mr. Patrick Ocailap gave us the opening remarks, and in which he walked us through the impact of COVID-19 and the economic policy response which the ministry has advanced and government at large. And he gave us the entire outlook. But the key takeaways from him were actually in terms of the response, because most of the the issues concerning the impact have also been addressed by other members. But as far as the response strategies which government has implemented, he talked of the interventions to prevent
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've seen that going on. You have taken on a new panelist. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome, Mr. Kayondo.
So he talked of the interventions to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, and also the immediate fiscal and monetary interventions, especially concerning how to deal with the expenditure of government. They had to cut expenditure and revise the budget, but also to stimulate the economy, the number of fiscal and monetary interventions which have been put in place, from tax measures to supporting utility companies to paying domestic arrears and the capitalization of UDB and UDC, among others. And also, he concluded by showing us that government going forward is going mainly to concentrate on 5 things. The first one being provision of finance to SMEs, and the most emphasis or the bias will be on agro-based SMEs. The second one will be to link enterprises to innovative approaches, especially digitization. And the third one, we talked of also trying to support the informal sector, but this will require, as a prerequisite, organizing these informal operators, especially in areas to boost their saving culture. And in that, they are going to put money in saving clubs through a program called the Myoga. And also he called upon the ICPA to look into this on the role you can play as an institution, and also the need to seize export potential was number 4. He said they are going to work on boosting export promotion as well as import substitution. Number 5, and the last one, accelerating absorptive capacity of the projects and the loans which they borrow. That we have a challenge of money which we borrow and we don't put to use in supporting the growth. They are going to be dealing with that. And after Mr. Ocailap and the CPA Frederick Chibedi moving a vote of thanks, we went direct into the session where the keynote address was given by Professor Waswa Balunywa, my boss, on the economic recovery from the pandemic, in which he has been his main message of his address, if I may start with that, was really for government to come out and play its role. He feels that the government hasn't been as robust and candid as it should be, and therefore he called upon government to come up. But he did a very great job in giving us the global, regional, as well as domestic picture of the COVID, during COVID and post-COVID kind of analysis in terms of impact, or the post-lockdown analysis, the impact of the virus itself, the Uganda prior to COVID, and what needs to be done to recover from the pandemic. And in there, he gave a number of policy propositions, which I'm sure the Institute will be very glad to fine tune and pass over to government to look at. The professor's emphasis was mainly on sector selection, which sectors government should support, that it feels government has not yet done a good job in selecting the particular sectors to support, and also the productivity issues and dealing with corruption, as well as free money, which is flying around, and also government and its role was mainly his major emphasis. There has been tremendous feedback on especially professors' presentation online, and we have taken note of all of those areas which have been addressed. Lastly, we have had the last session, which started at about 11:06 a.m. And in this, CPA Charles Oguttu ushered in Mr. Everist Kayondo to provide us with some overview on how the COVID has impacted the trade and commerce area and what they think as a sector should be done. And he's been, Mr. Kayondo has given us the entire analysis of how, as traders, they have been looking at this and its impact, ranging from the way it has affected the stock exchange to imports and export trade and the disruptions they have gotten as traders. But the key takeaway was that as far as the impact is concerned, it has not been as big or as large as it should have been, because the timing of the coronavirus was quite a bit good for traders, because China had just begun the lunar year, and therefore they were already having enough stock, which ran them up to around April. But from then, the orders were started to be affected, especially the quality of orders. And also, he talked of the interventions which they think government should do, especially repeating what Professor Balunywa has been talking about, and also what Mr. Ocailap talked about on the need to reduce the size of government, on government not borrowing internally to avoid crowding out the private sector, and even it would be counterproductive to all the efforts government has been trying to put in to rejuvenate the economy. He has also asked government to support those areas which are going directly to put money in people's pockets, and move away from the observer status, which I think Mr. Kayondo thought that it wasn't a good idea. Government has been too much observing, especially in as far as the direct impact on traders concerned, those areas of rent. They are being asked to pay rent for the period when they were under lockdown, and he feels something needs to be done, and has given a number of ways through which that can be done. So we have chair all of the views which have emerged out of this conversation, and also the feedback which the members have given. We shall be able to put it together and make the report in the subsequent meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramadan, for that great summary of the events for that day. And also on behalf of the Institute, it's our pleasure to thank all the participants who have been tuned in right from the beginning up to now. We appreciate your participation. You have made the sessions lively by sending comments, questions, so that we don't operate like a DJs. They normally operate without knowing there are people listening, but when we see the questions and comments, we know you are there making the sessions lively. I think the Institute has a lot to share with the government based on your participation. So at this moment, I hand you back to John at the Institute. Possibly he will share with you lunch coupon on
thank you, Charles.
Yeah.
On behalf of the Institute, I would like to thank the session chairs for today and the presenters for taking us through the presentations. We are coming to a close of day one, and would like to apologize for the poor network in the second session. We'll try to see that we don't get such a poor network in the subsequent sessions. For tomorrow, we shall open the room at 8:45 so that we can start on time at 9 a.m. We encourage you to ensure that you have a good network wherever you will be so that you can follow the presentations properly. You will use the same link to log in. Please don't share it. Should you wish to change the device, please log out and then log in on the other one. Otherwise, if you have concurrent devices, you might be charged according to each device. We also encourage you to tweet. We are using Twitter. Please tweet as much as possible. Otherwise, we wish you a good afternoon.
John, where the lunch coupon?
At your cost, wherever you are. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Huh?
Yeah.